Welcome to Judge My Round with Tom Brennan. Ashley, congratulations on winning the most recent Practical Horseman Virtual Horse Show. It was a huge turnout. I think there were roughly 50 entries, and that's a big accomplishment. So although I've seen you around once before a couple of weeks ago, we'll take another look at it and I'll give you my first impressions when I was judging the class. So this is a bit of an unorthodox start, but that's just the format of the Virtual Horse Show. So for judging purposes, once you walk away from the camera, that's sort of where I got started. I thought the horse had a really pleasant way of going. I like the canter, I love the rhythm. What stands out the most to me is the nice posture. She has a beautiful shape going around. It's a little bit of a conservative canter, but again, a beautiful rhythm that makes you like it before you get to the first jump. First jump is right out of stride. It's a little bit unexciting, I would say, but very nice. Nice and straight and square up the first line here. Really good showmanship. I like the soft feel. The horse is like a laser up that line. And it just looks pleasant, rideable. She has a great expression. Again, not an exciting jump. I think the horse can probably jump a little bit bigger and show us a little more effort, but it's all very smooth and matching. And when I'm judging, I'm looking for something that looks easy, looks interesting. That's probably her best jump on course so far, and maybe continues to be the best jump of the whole course. She put a little more effort into that when she had a little more space at the vertical there off the right lead. Little setup from the rider, and then a nice oxer. Again, what's standing out to me is how uneventful this is. That's a pretty consistent round, and a consistent round ends up being a competitive round, and I think that's a big part of why you bested all the other competitors in this virtual horse show class. Now that's the end of the course, and we wrap up with a nice courtesy circle, and I thought it was obviously very nice. I put you on top. And for me, the horse and rider combination here just showed a nice level of quality and laid down a really consistent performance, and that's why you ended up winning the class for Practical Horseman. Ashley, now that we've watched you around the first time and gone over our first impressions, we're going to go back and take a closer look, talk about a few of the things I liked, a few of the things I didn't like, and maybe how you can be even more competitive in the future.
Ashley Dewoolfson06292020.
So Ashley, as we get started, I'm going to freeze right here and just point out a few things that I think you could do a little better and what I do like. I think your tack fits very well. The bridle's appropriate, the saddle's appropriate, you are turned out beautifully. I wouldn't want a coat that is any shorter on you, but this looks nice the way it is. A few things that are just personal preference of mine that I think would make you and your horse present a little better would be as follows. The gloves with the white trim, just find it a touch distracting. Again, not anything that you would take off points for, but I think you could look more conservative with a plain black glove. Also, the girth on Cinderella. I would love to see a leather girth. I think that suits a white horse very well and presents a more polished look. Finally, it's hard to have a white horse, but getting that mane and tail to be sparkling white would really be great. That little bit of yellow tint, it is so hard, especially when you're at home, but in a horse show in the bright sun, I think she would present beautifully with a very clean, white, crisp look for her hair. Now, getting to the performance part here, when you pick up a trot, I think your horse has a really nice trot to her, and it might be nice to show off a few more steps than you do right there. That being said, you're very workmanlike, right off to a canter, and that is appreciated when we're judging. We like someone who looks prepared and ready to compete. As I said in the first part of this commentary, I really enjoyed the way of going. I think she has a nice expression, a nice rhythm, a nice balance. And the canter you pick up seems a little conservative, but it stays the same the whole time. And that just tells me that you're getting to know your horse and you're confident in the amount of stride that you and she need. Now right here is one of the few places I feel like we could improve. Let's back it up and look at that one more time as you turn off the rail. You ride your horse very softly, but here she throws her head a little in protest about coming off the rail to turn to the first line. And it gives me the impression that once in a while she's a little sensitive in her mouth, and I think over time you could work on that, getting her to accept the bit and the aids a little better, because at this next turn, coming to the single vertical, you start a little earlier and turn her with your leg better, and it's a much better presentation. She doesn't toss her head at all. We get a really good jump at the vertical, and she lands left again with a really nice lead change. It's not overly dramatic, and it's done on the straight line. Coming around to the right lead vertical across the ring is another consistent, even canter pace. She has great posture, and she actually jumps a really beautiful jump. I think I'd like to see that effort from her even more often if possible. In my opinion, some of that effort comes from just giving her a little more space. These jumps don't have a lot of fill, there aren't boxes and brush, but that little bit of extra space just gives her something to work with and show off her form a little better than when she's close to a jump that doesn't require her to back up. The turn here to the single oxer, to me, accentuates what I was talking about with her mouth. You see that you want to steady a little bit, and when you touch the reins, you have to be very gentle, and you do a good job of giving her a head again, and she gives you a nice jump, but you can tell she isn't totally accepting the bit just yet. So let's keep working on that for the future. The last line's great. I think you find a much smoother approach than the first time you jumped it. She's straight, you give her a little bit of space, and she jumps well. You did have to regulate her stride a little in that line, and she accepted that beautifully. I think once in a while you could find a way to steady her through your voice or your balance without having to go to the reins, because it's such a pretty picture with that soft, loose feel. And then again at the end we see that pretty trot, and it just makes me feel like we could show that off a little bit more. Overall, it was a really nice round. It was consistent, it was pleasant, and it really accentuated hunter ideals of the horse performing, the rider getting out of the way, a smooth, balanced pace with good, consistent jumping style throughout. And congratulations again on your win. Ashley, in this section of Judge My Round, we take questions, and you submitted a few through Practical Horseman. The first you asked is, what can you focus on to reach a goal of being competitive in the 3-foot adult amateurs at A horse shows? Hopefully watching the analysis has given you some tips, but to recap, I would really focus on your mare's rideability. She needs to accept the bit and accept your ride, and that just comes from time with you and your trainer and practicing pushing the different buttons that you will need when showing her. You can also take a little extra time to improve your horse's turnout. I really think you have the ability to earn some extra points with her color when she walks in the ring if she is absolutely gleaming. And finally, once in a while, you have a tendency to get a little bit ahead of the motion, especially out of the turn the last few steps before your horse jumps. Work on that for when the jumps get bigger. Your second question asks, what exercises can you work on to help your horse be more respectful of your right leg? And we did see that, especially on the turn to jump 2 that we discussed earlier in the analysis. While I don't know your horse and you very well from just watching one video, and I would encourage you to work with a trainer on this, some of the things that have worked for me in the past with horses have been exercises that get me out of the show ring. Your horse seems to lean on the rail a little bit. She's pretty straight once you get off the rail, but that transition from up against the fence to out in the open is difficult. So I would encourage you to go ride out in open spaces or different arenas, or just off the rail of your ring as much as possible, so that straightness starts to come from your aids, not an artificial aid like the fence line. Your third question asks for tips to help avoid being so nervous at horse shows. And that's a really common theme I hear from adult amateurs. I'm going to include here an excerpt from an article I wrote in 2017 for Practical Horseman about keeping your cool. This just includes some really simple and I think very useful tips on how to overcome nerves. It really comes down to a lot of the same principles we apply to horses: being consistent, being prepared, being confident in that preparation, and doing it enough times that you get comfortable with the idea. Ashley, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you found it useful, and thank you for participating in the Practical Horseman's virtual horse show. And I really appreciate the opportunity today to judge your round.